Good morning, children. Today we are studying about David some more as we talk about David's respect for King Saul. And today's memory verse is, "A friend loveth at all times." Our last story, we saw that David had fought Goliath and he had won, and he had conquered. Because of that, the Israelites were able to conquer the Philistines and to take back the authority that they had in the land. Now, because David helped King Saul defeat this mighty enemy, King Saul wanted David to come stay with him at the palace and to not go back home. Now, Saul's son Jonathan became David's greatest friend, and it never crossed Jonathan's mind to be jealous of David. Even though David might someday take his position as king, he never was jealous of David, and they became really close friends. And he said, "Let's make a promise to be friends, whatever may happen." They didn't know what the future held, but Jonathan and David loved each other. And Jonathan said to David, he gave David some of his most precious possessions. He gave him his sword, and he gave him his bow, and his special belt that he wore as he hunted and as he did war and stuff. And he gave it to him as a sign of the friendship that would last through good times and bad. Well, now, Saul had made David the commander of his army troops, and David was very successful. He became a favorite with the people in everything he did. And so soon after he came to live there, King Saul went and had a big celebration in the city, and because of his defeating the Philistines and defeating Goliath. Well, women danced and they sang and they played musical instruments, and they made up a little song that said, "Saul has killed his thousands, but David has killed his 10,000s." Well, all of a sudden, King Saul realized what they were singing. "They think David is greater than I am," he said. He realized that soon maybe David would take over as king and he would take his place. Well, Saul became very angry at David, and he kind of decided in his heart that maybe he needed to eliminate David because of the jealousy that King Saul now had towards David. Well, one day the king was in a terrible mood, and David was playing his harp to quiet Saul when suddenly the spear that Saul had been holding, he threw at David, and it barely missed David's head, and it stuck into the wall behind him. He ducked out of the way just in time as the spear crashed into the wall. Now Saul had made up his mind to kill David. He was so jealous, and the spirit, that evil, sad spirit that was taunting him, just made him hate David. So he had decided to kill David. Well, of course, David had to leave the palace, and he lived a very hard life after that. He slept in the forest, he slept in caves in the mountains. Wherever he went, Saul chased after him to take his life. And even the men that went with him that decided to side with David, they were in danger too. Well, King Saul, on pursuing David all this time, one of the days when he was searching, he came to a cave, and he decided to go into the cave and rest because his soldiers would be outside protecting him, and he was pretty weary. Anger and jealousy and rage kind of does that to you. Little did he know that it was the very cave where David and his men were hiding. They were very, very quiet, and he did not know they were in there. "Kill him," whispered David's men. But David shook his head. However, after the king had laid down and fell asleep, David crept up very quietly behind him, and he took his sword that he carried with him, and he cut off a corner of Saul's robe. Then he withdrew quietly back into the shadows and hid until the king left the cave. Well, when the king did wake up and walked out of the cave, He hadn't gone very far when he heard someone calling, "My Lord, the King! My Lord, the King!" Well, Saul looked to see who was speaking. "You must believe that I have no intentions of harming you," David said. "I could have killed you just now if I had wished. Look," and he held up a piece of Saul's robe. Well, Saul was very surprised and kind of embarrassed, and he called back and he said, "Is it really you, my son David?" Then he began to cry. And he said to David, "You are a better man than I am, for you have repaid me good for the evil I have done to you. When the Lord had delivered me into your hands, you didn't kill me as I would have killed you. May the Lord reward you well for the kindness you have shown me today." But David knew that in spite of his tears, Saul's feelings towards him had not really changed. David was very courageous to show respect for the position Saul held as king. Even though he knew that what Saul was doing was not right, he still respected the position that God had given him over the people. We should show that same respect for our political leaders and leaders in our church and leaders in our area, even if we don't agree with their leadership. Just remember that God is in control of who the leaders are over us, and that it's God's position to make sure that they do things according to His plan. And that's our story for today, and I thank you for joining us. And I just pray that you have a great week this week. Enjoy the sunshine. We'll see you next time. Bye.